Hello again, everyone. Mary Rose here at Stitch Bliss Corner on Sunday, November the 10th, 2019. And we're rapidly running out of year, but anyway, such is life. Now, I've got quite a mix today. I have my fully finished Mardi Gras by Cézanne, the Harlequin piece. And other bits and bobs. I just pulled it all. It's in a stack here next to me, and it'll be in no particular order, I've decided, because that's the way I roll. So, I might start out actually. Harlequin and I were out shopping a couple of weeks ago, and we went into one of those dollar stores. And oh, that's the other thing. Every now and again you might hear a bit of droning in the background, because just about every man and his dog is out today in the garden beating their lawns into submission, or cropping off and lopping off bits off their bushes and trees and things. So every now and again you might hear a bit of a buzzing noise in the background. If we're lucky, it'll be buzzing. Otherwise it'll be quite much noisier than that, but anyway, whatever. So back to the thrift store, and I saw something that, well, it's really kitsch, but I couldn't resist it. And here it is. It's this little lighthouse, and isn't it just the sweetest thing? It's got the little, well, it hasn't really got the light part, that's the only thing, but I thought if I even tried to put anything on there to suggest a light, it'd take away from the simplicity of it, because it's basically very simple. And it's just got the little rope around there, and then the fishing net here, and a little shell. Look at that shell there, and look at that seagull. I mean, isn't it just gorgeous? And the rope around the bottom. And actually, we did walk out of the shop and we went somewhere else. And Harlequin said, look, go back and get it, because if you go home, because it was the only one there. There was another one there, but it was much bigger. And he said, you'll wish you'd bought it. And I did, so we went back and we got it. And the interesting thing there is that this makes a great backdrop to what I'm about to show you now, which is this little statue that I got when we were living in England, and we went down to Portsmouth down there, and there was a shop there, and I really liked it. That's a naval area down there. There's lots of ships and things you can go and look at, and there's this little character here, and he reminded me a bit of Harlequin. So of course I got him, and as you can imagine, look, they just go together like a horse and carriage, don't they? I mean, so that is going to be on my stitchy room shelf, and I can just have a look at my Harlequin against his lighthouse every day. So that's that little, look at that. He's got a little beer there as well. And I'm thinking, because my husband is a great thinker. He often sits and thinks about things. So it's perfect. So that's my acquisition as far as that went. Now, what's the next thing? I think we might go now to Linda, Blue Horse, Yellow Cow. I have a message for you, Linda, so listen up. She was saying that she has ancestry from the south of Italy. She's got the Scandinavian side, and she's also got the Italian side. And she was having a bit of difficulty finding cross-stitch patterns and things for her part of Italy. She seemed to be getting the same designs all the time, basically. And I'm happy to tell you, Linda, that I went to my book here, which is Embroidery, Traditional Designs, Techniques and Patterns from All Over the World, Mary Gostelow. That one there. And it's marvellous. It just, gives you an idea of what styles there are from the different parts of the world. And she does a page or two for each country. And she just happens to have one here for Italy. And there's all the information there, which I suppose, Linda, you could maybe pause the video and be able to read it. I'm holding it steady enough. But anyway, your area, I'll just read you this little bit and all will become clear to you. One of the main regional forms of Italian embroidery is assisi work, named after the town in Umbria, a province in central Italy. It consists of an outline motif worked in double running stitch, traditionally executed in black or dark brown thread, with reserves filled in with cross stitch in bright red or blue. This results in a negative image appearance, with the main feature of the design left unworked, as in Sicilian embroidery. And you did mention Sicily, so yeah, so the assisi work, I did do a video on assisi work actually, and you can see it there. It's got the negative space. The actual work itself, the embroidery work, the cross stitch, is there, and then this is all bare, so that's the rather than that being the feature of the cross stitch with a background that's bare, it's the other way round. So it's really quite a beautiful way of doing embroidery. And the women sit out in their chairs in the street and work on large pieces, and each one takes one side kind of thing. It's very communal, their way of stitching, which is nice to think of, traditionally anyway. I mean, I don't know how many women these days have time to sit outside their houses doing their stitching or anything else, but that was what was traditionally done anyway. And a lot of altar cloths and things for the church were done that way. And many of the Assisi designs are based on Christian symbols, because of course their religion was at least extremely important to them and had a great influence on their life and their thinking and their traditions and their family values and everything. Yeah. So that it was for you, Linda. So I've done my duty there. Now, what's next? I think I might show you some of my knitting. Now, this was done so long ago that I don't even know that I could sit down and concentrate to do this kind of work now, but I was looking for something else. And of course, as is usually happens with me, I find other things when I'm looking for something. So this is a little jacket that I made, a little baby jacket. And I'll show you the book this came from. Now, I am not a great knitter by any stretch of the imagination. And I mean, I cannot even imagine a child in this, because one side seems a bit longer than the other, but I think it's because it's been bunched up, I think if it was blocked out, it'd probably be right. And I put a little bit of embroidery just there and there. Just looking at that design. So that was that little jacket, and then I've put a little bit on the back as well. Can you hear that? See, it's droning out there now. I thought Sundays were supposed to be peaceful. Anyway, so that's that one. And here's the next little one here. Let's see if I can give you a close-up of the design. And I mean, it must have been simple to do, because I can't stitch anything, I can't knit anything complicated. So it looks a lot more complex than it is. But these are very traditional, the sort of things that you would have dressed a child in the 50s, I'd say, because that's where the book that I took it from came from. And there's a little, I did a couple of little roses there. So that one turned out quite nicely. Even if I do say so myself. I think the other one's a little bit strange looking, but that one's not too bad. So that's those two, and I'll just show you the book. I have shown this before on an earlier video. It's Knit with Norbury. I can't really see anything on the title page there, but Knit with Norbury, there it is there. And that's what fashionable ladies of, well, I don't know if that's, I suppose that's late 40s, early 50s. What does it say here? Savile Row is the name given to these two smart suits tailored in knitting. The jackets are ribbed for a neat fit, and slim-fitting skirts have knee-length pleats to give them hem width. All navy is sophisticated for formal occasions, while red and navy check teamed with a white skirt is a winner for sunny days. Now let's just have a look here. Because Norbury was a man, of course, and he was a knitter. What was the date this was published? Excuse me for a minute. Doesn't seem to say. I'll see if I can find. And he goes through how to start knitting and everything. Let's have a little look here. The Knitter's Alphabet. I'm just looking for the pattern I've just shown you. Of course, it's a long time since I've looked in this book now, properly, you know. There's another stylish Savile Row design. There's some bed jackets. Oh, it's fascinating, this. Anyway, I shouldn't let myself get sidetracked here, but I just thought you'd be interested to see. So you had to have a slender figure, but I think a lot of people in those days, there weren't many people who were overweight, because there wasn't, you know, the same temptation, I don't think, to, and the people were a lot more active, you know, they didn't have cars, you know, so they had to walk or catch a bus or, now I wonder if this is where I got my design from. Anyway, there's some of the little, anyway, you get the idea. And I thought there was a picture of Norbury here, actually, but I might have got that online when I mentioned him in the past. I did a video about male stitchers, and I think I included him because he was a knitter. He was very particular about his knitting. He advised women to get a big piece of white sheeting, you know, like a piece of fabric, to put over the lap before you started doing your stitching to keep it clean. So he sounds like quite a particular person. Now, also, I'd like to congratulate Caroline on uh, winning the, well, not winning it, but her name was selected from the names for the giveaway that I had. So I'm glad to say that it did reach her. So excellent. And I hope you enjoy stitching that piece as much as I did, Caroline. And congratulations to you. I would like to say that when I do giveaways, I would like to put more in them when I send them, but the postage from Australia to anywhere in the world, because it's so far away from anywhere, it's just ridiculous how expensive it costs to send things. You know, I'd be better off. Well, you know, it's just crazy. Because, of course, Australia was actually founded as a penal colony. It was founded as a place where they had too many. The prisons were overflowing basically in England, and so they sent convicts out to this country to start a settlement here. I mean, part of it also was strategic, because the French were in this area, and England and France were at war over the ages, basically. So wherever one of those countries went, the other country would go to see, you know. So there's spheres of influence, and there were all sorts of things going on, as well as needing somewhere to put these people. A lot of the people that came here weren't hardened criminals. They were just, you know, times were tough in England, and people used to, you know, steal food for their family, and if they were caught, well, one of the punishments was to send them for 7 years to a penal colony in Australia. Well, I mean, in those days, 7 years, it was a life, because they couldn't really earn the money to come back to England. I mean, a certain number of them probably did. But a lot of them wanted to stay and set up here and went on from there. And of course, they needed women for the colony to help to populate it. So a lot of the women who were on hard times, you know, if they were caught, prostitution or whatever, they were sent out here as well. So whether they wanted to be or not. So that was another part of history that would probably be better not thought of too often. So, but I mean, the Australia today is very different to those days, of course, and there are many families here who are very happy to trace their family tree back to the First Fleet, or, you know, because or this, you know, there was the first colony was founded, and on it went from there, and there were free settlers that came, of course. But a lot of families are more than happy to refer to their ancestors that were brought out here for stealing a loaf of bread or whatever it may have been. And, you know, it's all part of their family history, and they're very proud of it. So, anyway, sorry, I don't see how I get sidetracked, but that is where I'm leaving that for the moment. Now, oh yes, and I have been binge watching Perry Mason, Raymond Burr. I've got the entire series, Della Street and Perry Mason and Paul Drake, the private detective that used to, I don't know, well, people of my vintage know all about Perry Mason, but for you younger people, if there are any watching, bless you if you are. Yeah, Perry Mason was a TV series that broke new ground in crime history. I mean, really, all the CSI and all those programs are really very similar to Perry Mason. They, you know, it's just that they have all the forensic science to back them now. Whereas in Perry Mason's time, in the 50s, you know, it wouldn't be the way it was then now, of course. But it's just very good. I mean, Raymond Burr, who played the chief attorney in the series, his rival, who was the prosecution person, was a man called Hamilton Berger. And I can remember watching it as a child and really disliking this Hamilton Berger. But now when I watch it, I realise just how smart he was. He was a very good actor. I think that was William Tallman. Let's see. Yeah, William Tallman as D.A. Hamilton Berger, and Ray Collins as Lieutenant Tragg, who used to be the first one on the scene. Usually when the crime had been committed, they were all murders. And but Raymond Burr had a great screen presence. He was a marvellous actor. I mean, you're riveted when you watch. You can't not. You can't ignore him, put it that way. And Paul Drake, the private detective, he had a very strong voice. So he was giving details that normally would be quite boring, or you might have not listened too much. But because of his voice and his diction, you hear it all, you know. Marvellous series. Anyway, I've been binge watching that. I've been able to fit in my favourite floss tubers in between, so that's been good. But that's what I've been doing with watching videos. Now then, also Lisa Kay, I don't know if she's still watches, but hello to you, Lisa, anyway. Bless her cotton socks, she sent me the most beautiful stitched piece. It was a bag, beautiful. And she also sent me, you know, it was wrapped up in some very nice paper, and also had a ribbon on there and a little butterfly and a little charm, you know. And I decided that I would stitch something that I like to think is a very good message for myself in particular, and that is this one, Live in the Moment. And I've just used some variegated DMC thread for that, number 52. It's one of the new colours, and you can see the variegation is really quite good there. And I put Lisa's little charm there. So I haven't got any glass in this, which is very unusual for me. I usually make sure that I put glass on because I don't want the stitching to get dusty or contaminated by bugs and things. I mean, I must say I'm astonished by the number of people that don't put glass on their stitching. I sort of understand that they feel that it looks better or whatever, but I just think I'd be freaking out. I don't think I could do it, especially as you can get that glass today that looks as though there isn't any. I mean, my Dragons of Sumatra, I look at that and it looks as though it's got no glass in it, but it's protected. And I think that, you know, well, each to its own. That's just me anyway. Right, so that's that. This is a little frame I got from an op shop, and so I pressed that into service. So that's that. And I'll just show you the book that I got the wording from. It's this one, and Kerry has got this one. Kerry in the UK, Kitty Stitcher. She was showing hers the other day, and it is a marvellous book because it's got so many different motifs. You know, if you're thinking of doing something, it's like an encyclopedia with whatever you want to stitch in there. If you want to stitch a bee or anything at all, or if you're in a Christmas mood and you want to do Santas, You know what I mean? It's just very handy. So I got my lettering out of there. Right, now then, I suppose now we'd better get on to Harlequin so that you can see. Now I'll just give you some information. Actually, I will go now to the stages of the stitching. I took some pictures as I went along, some stills, so you can just see Harlequin from the start to the finish, because I started him in Mania this year. So, you know, I've had a few interruptions, but I've been solidly stitching on him ever since May. And he's been finished about 4 or 5 days now. I've finished him and framed him up. So we'll just go to that now. Right, so that was the stages of Harlequin. Now, my Harlequin, he has given me some statistics to tell you. The stitches, it was 224 wide, 290 high. A total number of stitches was 64,960. Pattern size 284 wide, 368 high. That'd be centimeters, because that's what we have here. 180 colours, 20 count Ada. Now I only used a hoop doing this the whole time, so you can do a larger piece with a hoop. And I just like to, well, I'll show you the piece first, and so you can just see it. I laced it at the back, and there it is. I'm trying to, naturally enough, there's reflection there. That curtain. Now, if truth be told, I could have actually made this a bit tighter, because it is a bit ridgy in places, but it's only in certain light it's like that. Most of the time it just looks fine. It's just the way, this is very harsh lighting, but it has been a joy to stitch, and yeah, and there'll be details below to the pattern maker that this was produced from, because Harlequin had a lot to do with putting it together for me. Yeah, so there, and I framed it myself, and I wanted to be like the page out of the book. And I'll just show you the page out of the book. I'll just pop that down now. And there's the page out of the book with the border white like that, the way I have it in the picture. So, Cézanne's Mardi Gras, finally finished, finally finished, and what a joy that was to stitch. So this was my chart, and I'm one of the old-fashioned people, I proudly say that, that used the paper chart. I had it on my slanty table, and as I went, I just used the red pencil. And then I started to use crosses to cross where I'd been. So you get an idea of how much work was involved with it when you see the size of the chart. But it's like anything, you know, it's like how they say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. Well, you know, nothing could be truer for full coverage cross stitch. It's best really not to look at the vast expanse of white when you're setting out, or even when you're, you know, a quarter of the way through, and you start to think to yourself, you know, can I really keep going with this? You know, it's, but I think if your desire is there enough, that will overcome the fact that you want to see that on your wall, and it's not good enough to have it as a picture on your wall. You want it stitched on your wall. And I think that is where sometimes stitches can get a little bit not mixed up, but you know, to fall in love with a picture is not the same as actually stitching it and having it there on your wall. You know, you can want a lot of things. It's a bit like if you've got scads of money and you could buy any artwork you wanted, but you've only got a certain number of walls in your house. And even if you had a vast house, how often would you actually go and look at those? Even if you wanted every single one of them and you loved each one of them, how often would you really see them? And I think it's very easy when you're looking at all these beautiful designs online, like samplers. I mean, they're just samplers all over the shop, you know. And I suppose this is a bit of an unpopular opinion of mine, but I don't know. I just sort of think, well, samplers, once you've seen two or three of them, you've pretty much seen them all. I mean, I just have, I don't know what the fascination is with samplers. To a degree I do, because I look at them and each one of them you think, oh, you know, but actually stitching each one, I mean, if you bought every single one you wanted to stitch, you literally could not possibly complete all of them, you know. So I think it's nice to have a collection. See, I think this is where it comes into collections, where people will have a collection of charts, and then they can go and pick one out of which one they want out of they might have 50 of them, and know full well that they couldn't possibly in their lifetime stitch every single one of them. But they like to have the 50 that they can go and pick their next one out from. I think that's the thing. And of course, people who like samplers, it's a bit like people probably think about me, you know, why on earth does she want to do full coverage all the time? You know, what's the matter with the woman? So obviously, each stitcher has their own particular sphere of interest in what they like to do. I think that's probably what it is. I mean, for me, as I say, I don't really understand the full fascination of samplers. But then again, if I was a sampler person, I'd be thinking, well, it's obvious, you know, why can't you see what the fascination in samplers is? You know, so, yeah. Anyway, I digress once again. Now, the frame that I used for Harlequin, I used this watercolour paper. Now, and I'll just show you, see, it's a good size. So you can adjust, if you've got a frame that it's slightly too big and you want a bit of a border, but you don't want to be heading off to try and get the, you know, that matte boarding, and you have to get it cut and all this sort of thing. If you want to avoid the expense and the bother of going to get one that's exactly the size of the stitching that you want to frame, this is a really good alternative, because it's a good size, so you can make your frame, your matte frame, out of it very easily. I mean, I did it just sitting here with a tray on my lap. And what I did was I got the sheet of paper, and then I've made my frame, you know, I just measured it and everything. And see, it's a good thickness. And one side on watercolour paper, you might not be able to see it, I doubt if you can, but it's got a bit of a grain to it. I don't think that's picking it up. But anyway, it's smooth on one side, it's got a slight grain on the other. And so you basically measure your paper out. Let's see if I can put that in. Measure your framing. And then you just cut a little bit, maybe with a blade or something like that. Get a start on it. And then you can just cut it out with your scissors, which is what I did. You can see I started up here, cut out with my scissors and made a frame. So, you know, if you don't want to spend a fortune on framing and matte framing and all that, that's a really good alternative, because it's easy to cut, the watercolour paper, but it's that little bit thicker than ordinary paper. So, you know, it keeps its shape and everything. Right, so that's that. Now there's something else I framed as well. Now I've had this for a long time, and I saw a frame and I thought, well, I think I could frame that. So this is the piece that I stitched. It's a beginner's guide to Blackwork, Lesley Wilkins. And this is just fabulous for if you are wanting to design your own sampler. Here I go. No. If you want to design your own sampler, sorry about that, I got cut off. I think my iPad must be a sampler fan. But anyway, so this is an excellent book, and it really shows you all the patterns. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not showing you the what am I trying to say? The design, you know, the chart rather than the actual stitched. Yeah, this is stitched. And there's the famous pugilist design motif. That's based on boxes. The pugilists. That's the history of that particular piece. It goes on about threads and things. There's another one of her. Really quite lovely. Anyway, so I did this particular one. It's based on a Tudor design, and that edging is just really 3D. What does it say here? Tudor rose, lily and pansy motifs like these were used extensively in the 16th century embroideries. Roses were the emblems of the Tudor kings. So, of course, it was going to appeal to me. So there it is. And here is my framed piece. And it came up a treat. I was very happy with that. I thought, well, I won't put a border, you know, a mat in there. I'll just let the stitching speak for itself. Because I am a great fan of plain, unadorned frames. That the stitching actually dominates the piece. Let's see what else. Oh yes, the other thing I was going to say about when I was working on Harlequin was that once I got down to the bottom part, there were less colours in there. So I just did a new strip of that holds the yarns, the threads. I did a new one with less on it, and look what's on the back of it. That's because I use, you know, if I can find card, I'll use it. And I couldn't believe when I looked at the back. I thought, oh, well, look at that. Yeah, you got to laugh, haven't you? And then finally, I did a little bit of cutting out Matisse style, because you know, there's a little bit of Matisse fallout in this household, and I thought I'd have a go and do a few Matisse type cutouts, and so I did, and this is what I came up with here. And you know, it's amazing what you can make from shapes of paper. I had no idea. And you know, it's just little orange shapes there. And I mean, for the, you know full well that's a fishbowl and a stool there. This I don't really know. It's sort of, well, it's almost like a corridor, isn't it, with the doors leading off it. That's what it could be. A whole lot of green doors. And then I scraped a little away there just to give a bit of dimension there. So yeah, get your scissors out and some coloured papers and see what you can do. All right, well, so now I have finished Mardi Gras. I am stitching something for a family member, so I can't really show that now. But as soon as I've finished that, I'll get on with something else. So until I see you next time, any links to, well, I'll put the link down for that, or, you know, not a link. I don't know if it'll be a link anyway, but just some information about that program that I used for Harlequin. All right, so I think that's enough from me for today. And I shall get back to you when I've got something to show you. In the meantime, happy stitching to you. And where's my live in the moment? That is such good advice, especially if you're a worrier. Just live in the moment. Just enjoy the day that has been given to you, and don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow never comes. So yeah, so goodbye from the very longest farewell that I think Mary Rose has ever done. And I shall catch you later. Bye for now.